What's up, Playground? It's me, Shanila, and welcome back to your Shadow Work series. We are on episode 8 of 22 as part of a Shadow Work series where we're talking about the ins and outs of shadow work. All the parts of you that you don't want to face, but you probably should because it's going to help you out. If you're not already subscribed to the podcast, go ahead and hit subscribe so you get a notification when the episodes drop as part of the series. But this episode is going to be a fun one. Now, we broke down what the heck shadow work is. So if you haven't caught up the last previous episodes, definitely go ahead and do that. We talked about the superpowers that come from doing your shadow work. We talked about the inner mystical energy that, arises, the plant medicines that you can use as catalysts and tools for your healing journey. But what about some of the practical things that you might be dealing with right now in your shadow work? And all I gotta tell you is don't text your ex. Okay, don't text your ex. All right. Shanila, why are you even saying that? I'm not gonna text my ex, Okay, let me break it down for you. Texting your ex when it comes to shadow work is basically saying you're texting a previous version of you. A version of you that you broke up with already, a version of you that you left in the past, a version of you decided was no longer compatible with you. You said, this relationship ain't gonna work out. I'm not getting my needs met. I'm not enjoying the growth trajectory here. I feel like I'm in love with your potential, but I'm not really in love with you in this present moment. We gotta go. You know what I mean? Like we have to break up, and you have that breakup. And you went through the grief, you went through the mourning process, you went through, the am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right decision? You did all of that, but you might come to a moment in your shadow work where you're thinking about it. You know what I mean? It's just easier to return. It's easier to go back. It's easier to try it out one more time and just see like what it's like. Maybe it's different now. And you kind of have amnesia. You would literally have like a little bit of brain damage where you don't remember that it sucked to be you then. You know what I mean? And maybe not fully sucked, but there were so many things that you wished and you prayed and you wanted to change back then that all of a sudden here you are in this new version of you and you're not fully integrated in this new version of you. So there's kind of this like panic, let me abandon this path and go back to what's comfortable. And that's what your nervous system does. It says, this is new. This is scary. This is unknown. This is uncomfortable. So, you know what? Like it wasn't that bad back there, was it? It wasn't, it wasn't horrible. And you have this amnesia of like how much prayer and how much, effort you put in to not be where it is that you were. And it doesn't even have to be you so many years ago. It could even just be a few months ago. And in fact, you a few months ago are more at risk because you don't text exes from like 30 years ago or 10, you know what I mean? You're more likely to text somebody who was more so recently in your past. So if there's a recent version in your past that you feel like you are not fully over, there's kind of this residue of maybe we're still in a relationship, we're kind of in a situationship, and we kind of, leave the door open every now and then, you're going to find this to be true in your shadow work. That this new version of you is trying to manifest. This new version of you is trying to come into reality, into embodiment, into existence, into this reality. It's trying to come out. Right? And there's a certain level of pain that you already went through in order to come to that realization. But now that you're not fully this person, you might be like 80% this person, but you're not fully this person. And I'm making up a percentage. Maybe you're anywhere from 60 to 80% this new person. But that last bit, that last 40 to 20%, it's like, what if I just return? It's like, is it going to be worth the effort? Is it going to be worthwhile? Is it going to be, right? Like there's all of these kind of, what if kind of thoughts that kind of entertain in your head. So you think about like, let me just send this text and let me try it out. So it might be in the variation or in the version where you actually start to hang out with people from your past and it kind of brings out that old version of you. Or you start to entertain maybe even shows that you used to watch that you're just like, I'm not even into this, but like it reminds me of comfort. It's nostalgia. Or you start to pick up a habit that used to be from back then. So you spend all of these months building up a new habit. You spend all these months, thinking about your holistic wellness. Your emotional health, your physical health, your mental health, your spiritual health, your financial health, you spend all this time thinking about all these things, but then you're kind of regressing in your behavior. You're just like trying it out. It's just like, okay, well, like if I hang out with my ex as friends, then it's not really like going back. If we just get lunch, then it's not really like that. But if we just like hang out every single day, you know what I mean? It's like you're trying to create narratives for why this situation or this interaction is okay. And now I know somebody's listening, well, I'm friends with my ex. It's like, all right, chill out. This is an analogy here. Relax. Try to work with me here. So you're going to find that to be a inclination. You're going to find this natural inclination, this itch to kind of revert to trying out something from the past because it's familiar. And that's something really, really, really true about your nervous system, is that it likes familiarity. It likes what it already knows. So it doesn't necessarily like to change, even if it's for the better and it's an obvious better change. It doesn't like to be in uncertainty, because if you're in a toxic thing, but it's a consistent toxic thing, then you are predictably aware of the patterns that you can look out for. So your nervous system, your mind, your energetic body kind of prefers that. It likes being near the vicinity of comfort, familiarity, nostalgia, what it knows. What it doesn't like is the unknown. So this concept, when I say don't text your ex, it's like, yeah, it's your ex, but your ex is also a previous version of you that you should be really mindful of, that might be trying to come back into your life. And it's trying to allure you back. It's like, hey, remember we weren't alone when we were hanging out together? Remember how, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's like enticing you with like, hey, remember when? Wasn't that so good? And it's trying to, make you forget about all the things that you wanted to change about that time, or the things that you were trying to heal through all the time. It's like pointing out the good of that. And that's what exes do when they text you. They never like, hey, remember how we argue all the time and we hate each other? It's like, that's not how they lead with. You know what I mean? Like, that's not how they lead. They're just like, wow, I really miss, sitting and having conversations with you. Or I really miss, da, da, da. They talk about the positives. They talk about like the enticing parts. And you're like, oh yeah, I really do miss that too. And then you have this chemical reaction. Nostalgia and memories, they have chemicals that are associated with it, especially happiness. Right? So you release a little bit of oxytocin in the body, you release some endorphins, you release a little bit of adrenaline because you're not supposed to be texting your ex. So all this adrenaline is pumping through your blood. And the dopamine hit of just like getting the attention, somebody's giving you attention, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, okay. Right? So they're leading with this enticing thing. So similarly, if you replace this ex, like an actual relationship, with a previous version of you, it's kind of doing this enticing thing too. Like, hey, let's go back. Hey, let's like do this because don't you think you were cooler? And don't you think it was nicer? Don't you think it was better? Da, da, da. Yes, and. Because yeah, I do miss watching movies and snuggling. Yeah, but also remember the like 80 other things that are not desirable, right? Like just to experience that again, you're not compromising the thing that you didn't like, or the things that didn't work out, weren't compatible in this interaction. So long story short, as part of this shadow work series, we're pointing out some of the very common behaviors that you're likely to encounter. And in this process, you might start to feel enticed. You might feel you're like in the middle, this limbo, this liminal space where you're not fully this new you, but you're not quite your old you too. And your nervous system says, which is harder? Is it harder to become this new you? Because now I have to think about new ways of thinking, new ways of behaving, new habits. And maybe it's not fully new, but it's like establishing this version of you behaves in a certain way. This version of you acts and thinks in a certain way. So there might be more to do. So is that harder, or is going back to my old self harder? And the answer most of the time is actually going back is easier, right? Going back to the ex so that you don't have to, like start from ground zero with somebody else. It's like the easier choice sometimes. It's not the smarter and more compassionate choice towards yourself, but that's neither here nor there, right? This is just to say, from a nervous system perspective, your nervous system, your energetic body is basically saying which is harder, this or that. And it says that is harder. Going to a new me, new patterns, starting over, new thing, new versus coming into this energy of like this old familiarity. That's easier. So you have to determine where it is that you want to put your effort in. And hopefully it's towards the challenging decision, often challenging, but also better and more exciting and more worthwhile, more fulfilling in the long run. So you're trading this long-term gratification over the short-term gratification. Short-term meaning like, yeah, you could just go back and just feel happy for a little bit, but then what? Like, okay, why'd you do that? You know what I mean? Like, do you feel good? Are you proud? You know what I mean? It's like, you're not. So it's like the short term is like this quick hit of validation. And then the long term is to say like, no, I'm actually going to stumble through becoming this new person and becoming this new chapter, new version, however, dramatic of a change that is. Sometimes it's big dramatic change and sometimes it's not. So you can kind of navigate what that looks like for you. So I'll leave you here with that for this episode about don't texting your ex. And I'd love for you to take a screenshot of this episode and tag me on Instagram at shanila.sathar and let me know what it is that you took away from this episode. And of course, if you're down to do shadow work with me in the new year 2025, you can come to shadow work for 6 weeks. We're working on the inner wounds. We're working on not texting our exes, our ex selves. We're working on our essence. We're working on our superpowers and truly understanding how our inner wounds no longer have to control the way that we experience and live life. So if you are interested to come, which I hope you do because it's going to be an amazing time, you can hit the link in the show notes or head to www.alwaysplay.org/shadow-work. Shadow work. And I truly hope to see you inside of our 6 weeks where we're meeting together in a very beautiful group energy. We're dancing, we're twerking, we're shaking, we're doing breath work, we're doing so much somatic work and also getting to the real shit. So if you're down to grow, let's go into the shadows, my friends. And just remember, the world is your playground. And until next time, I will catch you soon.